Hello and welcome to the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival Amplify Artist Conversations. I am Erin Merritt.
And I am Ariella Wolfe, and we are the BAWTF Instigators, along with a wonderful team supporting the Amplify 24-hour performance event, which was originally scheduled at Brava Theater for April 18th and 19th, with 70 plus performances by over 200 artists.
With theaters closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, our live Amplify event is on hold. But we refuse to allow the need for social distancing to keep us from amplifying the amazing women, non-binary, and trans artists that are going to be part of this event once we're allowed back in theaters. Please also do stay tuned not only for the rescheduling of the live event, but for a shorter version that we're going to be doing online on April 18th. The details will be up soon at our website, www.bayareawomenstheaterfestival.com, and that's theater with an R-E, theatrafestival.com. But in the meantime,
we are in conversation with Katja Rivera, director, performer, playwright, and Evelyn Jean Pine, theater scientist, co-authors, playwrights of The Invisible Project. And before we start our conversation, if you're on your phone, computer, you can find out more information about their work on The Invisible Project at www.evelynjeanpine.com/invisible. Hey, Evelyn and Katja, thank you so much for being part of our Amplify event and joining us today.
Thank you.
We are wondering how you are doing in this very strange moment.
I've been working very, very hard. I teach performance studies, so I've been dealing with all my wonderful students who suddenly are taking my classes online rather than face-to-face. I've also had an opportunity to read some plays by women that I hadn't had a chance to read before or recently. So it's a time of real change. It's a time of real connection. And, you know, it's also a time where we're seeing sort of inequities and some real ugliness too. But my own life is a little privileged and cozy.
All right. Thank you, Evelyn. Evie. Katja, how about you? How are you doing?
Well, I'm unemployed. I'm the opposite of Evie. I am a massage therapist as well as a theater artist. And so for foreseeable future, I am at home. So that's been a challenging and a gift. It's been challenging because as much as I love my home, being forced to stay here as long as I, am now is it's different, and I'm getting used to it. It's a gift because I'm getting time, and boy, I just don't have that usually in my life. So I'm doing things like I'm polishing furniture and rearranging my altars all around my house, and delving into paperwork from the early 2000s. So it's been challenging and a gift at the same time.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that. One of the reasons we have you here today is we are just curious to have you share more with us. Can you let us know how the Invisible Project came to be?
The Invisible Project came to be because I was sort of in love with Katja from afar. I was at a lot of events where she was. I saw her amazing production of, I can't even remember the name of the brilliant play that was a custom made. Yes, at Eurydice. And so I wanted her to direct my plays. I gave her a couple of plays to read. She declined to direct them. But when I had asked her, I thought, well, if she won't direct my plays, at least maybe I can become friends with her. And so we went out for coffee and we're yakking, and we started talking about times when women feel invisible and whether that's a good thing or a bad thing. So for me, that's my memory of how this all started.
I don't remember you asking me to direct anything. I was like, really? I don't remember that. But we were both doing Best of Playground. And that's when I remember when we had coffee, and we're both, pushing up in our 60s now. And so we're both experiencing this thing of becoming invisible as a woman, as a person, and so that's when that project for us had a lot of juice, and that's what we started talking about, exploring together as writers together.
Right. And just for those of you who are listening and may or may not know, Best of Playground is part of a local group called Playground, which you can find at playground-sf.org.
And they've been delightful, I think, to both of us. They've really we're both part of sort of their large artistic community, which in the Bay Area is quite powerful in terms of giving mutual support and creative ideas and spark.
So you started talking about becoming invisible as women and the times that women are invisible, both as they age and probably before so. Yeah?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we also started exploring, exactly who is invisible in our society, and we started writing that down. Another thing we did, Evie, you want to talk about the teas?
Well, one of the things that we decided was we were really interested that there was so much commonality and yet some difference in our experience. So we just started inviting women we knew to get together, and we'd buy them tea and we'd talk about their feelings and experience of being invisible. And what was so interesting about that, we'd have like 3 or 4 women, and to hear them share what their experience was. And part of what surfaced very quickly was the idea that being invisible often is a bummer, but sometimes it's really a superpower as well. And one of the things that was really fun was starting to explore that. And we just really used this series of teas as a way to meet some fabulous women, but also to really open our minds to all kinds of dimensions beyond simply our individual experience. And a shout out to another local literary organization. We hosted all those teas at the Borderlands Cafe. And Borderlands, of course, is the world-renowned local science fiction bookstore, and a wonderful place for people to congregate, and also will mail order books for people while they're sheltering in place. So
amazing. Let me see if I can find the website for that.
And part of what's interesting about that is this turned out to be, in a way, a kind of science fiction play that we don't think about. We didn't think about it in that way, but there are aspects.
Why don't you? So I've gotten to read it, but why don't you tell our listeners a little bit, just a little teaser about what they will be seeing when they get to see this play?
Well, they'll see basically 2 women scientists discover the secret of invisibility, and then that secret being brought out into the world by an artist. So that's a sense of it in some ways. But it's really about a moment of discovery, and then how the world reacts when women discover things.
Right. And when they take control of their visibility and invisibility, right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
And so how do you think that this will play differently as part of an all women and non-binary and trans event? Or what was it that drew you to having this be part of Amplify?
Well, because one of the reasons that we wrote it also was we wanted to create a play where women who were middle-aged or older were playing multiple characters, because we really felt like often it's the young men who get to have a part where they get to play all kinds of different characters. And in our play, it's a cast, I think, of 7 women, am I right? Who play a whole range of characters. And so
in this incarnation, it's 5.
5, that's right. That's right. Wow.
Yeah.
So that was also part of the impetus of being part of Amplify. I mean, we feel it's such an important festival in terms of allowing women artists to both show what they normally do and also get opportunities that sometimes are not offered to them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What about, so each of you has written on your own, and now you've come together to write something together. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, what is your writing process as an individual? How is it working to write together? What's your process?
Well, actually, this is my first play.
Congratulations.
One woman writing, but this is actually my first play. So I was leaning on.
Hang on. What do you mean you've done a lot of one woman writing?
I've done monologues, nothing that I've ever even performed. So I'm looking for this process really a naif. Someone very familiar with, theatrical writing, but never having really done like dialogue ever.
Okay. But solo shows or just actually short monologues?
Just short monologues. Yeah. Okay. Not even a show.
Well, welcome.
It's a blast, isn't it?
Yes, it is. You get to pretend. It's really, I felt like when Evie and I would get together, it was just us getting together and playing pretend. It was like, wow, this is cool.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, Evie is the more senior playwright. What is your process typically when you're writing on your own?
All kinds of ways. What was the question? Is the senior playwright? What's my take
What's
on
your process?
What is your more typical process when you're writing by yourself?
Well, my process, is to sit down and write. I definitely am a person who reads stuff out loud a lot, brainstorms a lot out loud, because I come out of a performing background or beginnings. But one of the great things about collaborating with someone is it's not like you get 2 minds, you get all kinds of minds, because we bring all kinds of experiences. And I think that one of the things that's just been delightful is how exponentially the creativity happens. And I do think that I just think it's a really powerful thing. And people talk about collaboration with a certain kind of fear and caution. But part of what's really delightful about this one has been, I feel like it's been very liberating in many ways, that we have been willing to try all kinds of strategies and tactics.
I think it's interesting that you're saying that people talk about collaboration and with such wariness, since theater is a completely collaborative art form. Like there's literally no way to do it by yourself, right?
Right. Like if you're a writer, if you're a playwright and you start complaining about your director, your actors or whatever, it's like become a novelist, right? I mean, basically as a playwright, you're creating blueprints, but you're not building the building. And Katja, actually, though, part of the fun of being a playwright too is, while everyone else does the hard work, you get to sit at home and smoke cigars or do whatever. So, but yeah, I mean, it's really been a great great pleasure. And we've really tried all kinds of experiments that I think, because there are two of us, have been easier to do than on our own. And we've also had, the power of having someone say, that's not working, right? Like,
Mhm.
very hard to be in denial when you're collaborating. Like,
Uh-huh.
group mind only goes so far, to the point of one of us will say, doesn't quite work. Or, okay, we'll keep that in for now, but believe me, next draft, that's out of there.
Yeah.
So,
Actually, speaking of that kind of collaborative moment, have there been any moments of feedback, whether from each other or a mentor audience, that have really been impactful? Like, wow, that was super useful, or something that caught you off guard that ended up staying in a future draft?
Oh, actually, I do. When we first wrote this, we did write it with men in the play, and one of the actors, we had two men in the play at that point, said, "I think there shouldn't be any men acting in this play." Acting, Rich Reinhold.
right, that's right.
Aw, bless Rich.
Does he have a website?
Oh, I'll see if he has a website. We like Rich.
Yeah,
Oh, he's a doll.
yeah.
So that was one time where I was just like, "Whoa, whoa."
We do have a website here for Richard Reinhold. So Richard Reinhold, REINHOLDT.com. Lovely
Right?
human being and wonderful actor and wonderful giving coworker.
Yes.
I have to say, one of the things that's amazed me is every staged reading we've had, the amount of resonance the idea of invisibility for women has. Because in a way, uh, it's it's so obvious, and it is talked about a fair amount, and yet it lives really deep, the experience of it. And it's always interesting to me, women wanting to share their own experiences of being
Yes.
invisible after hearing or experiencing the play, and that's been
Yeah.
really moving to
Tell
me.
us more. Tell us more about that. Any
Well,
particular
um,
conversations?
I mean, there have been things that necessarily we didn't think about. There was one woman who told me one of the things that was weirding her out right then, being invisible, was feeling she was becoming invisible to her children
Mm-hmm.
growing older. And that
Mm.
was something I hadn't thought about, but what was such an interesting way to look at it is this feeling of having been the center of their lives, and now she felt sometimes
Yeah.
they couldn't see her.
Yeah.
We've had people talk about, um, you know, sort of terrible instances in their lives when they felt overlooked, but also moments when people say, oh, I snuck into that, or uh,
Mm-hmm.
they didn't realize I was there, and therefore I was able to afterwards do something that maybe I hadn't wanted to. And those were always fun too.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember seeing Incredibles when it first came out, and
Uh huh.
the different powers that the different family members had, and then the teenage girl's power to become invisible. And I thought, that is it. Yeah, that's the one, right? So that's that moment when you first notice that you might want to be invisible sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And it's such
Yeah.
an interesting path in our lives from, first of all, assuming as small children that we're never invisible and that we have all this power, then getting to an age where we want to be invisible, and then wanting to be visible and everybody else treating us though we are invisible. It just does seem like a lifelong metaphor.
Hmm. Absolutely.
Yes.
And I mean, I
Yes.
do think that women were sort of overseen. I mean, we could go on and on about the discussion of the male gaze on women and stuff. But I think there's a way in which sometimes for women it's just thrilling to feel no one's looking at them.
Mhm.
I mean, I remember after I got married, like, it just felt like when I was getting married, everyone was taking my picture, and I'm somebody who's not that interested in having my picture taken. And I remember my husband and I, like a day later, this woman came up to us with this camera and she said, "Could you take our picture?" She was a tourist. And it was
Mm.
like, to me, like the best picture I ever took. It was so great to feel like, oh, I get to look at them, you know? And
Mhm.
it's so silly because as a bride, people are taking pictures of you because they love you, right?
Mhm.
But it was still, for me, it was just like, leave me alone, Like,
Mhm.
that's not my milieu. So,
Mhm.
yeah.
That kind of reminds me of a question that we've been asking some people, and which is all about how did you get to this moment in your career, and what brought you here? And I know that's a very huge, loaded question that could be a talk all by itself. But were there any particular moments of either doubt or discouragement or inspiration, or what were the things that kept you going?
And I know for those of us who are younger, aka me, it's helpful to have a perspective from many different folks about, how do you make a life in this art form?
Mhm.
Well, actually, I took about a 10-year break when I became a mom from doing theater. I meant to take just a year break because I didn't know who I was apart from being an actor at that time. And it turned into 10 years. Uh, and there was a point where I was going to be studying nursing. And as I was doing my physiology final, a monologue from Hamlet came into my head. And I remember thinking, go away. No, I need to think about these equations, these chemical equations. I just had this moment of like, oh shit, I'm not done. And since that moment, I've just known, like, no matter, as a theater artist, I also have to have balance in my life because I have other things besides theater in my life. But I just knew that I will always be doing theater. It's just like this, this knowledge of like, this is who I am. I can't deny that. Um, so having that happen, I since then felt like it doesn't matter the recognition. I want to do work, but the work is more important than where uh, it take how much money I even make. It's more about the work and getting to work that is important to me.
Can you talk just for a moment about how you found your way back in? I'm actually looking at all the barriers to reentry for people who've interrupted their careers, and particularly those who are parents. And I know it's a giant problem for many folks. And I'm wondering if you can. I know people get very discouraged, because it's not always an easy path back in. How did you find your way in?
Well, for one, the scene had completely changed.
Mm-hmm.
And my first show back was with this theater company that I had never heard of called Shotgun Players.
Mm-hmm.
um, Back at the print shop, which I think you remember, Erin.
Yeah, I do. And that's
So
everybody. Locals all know Shotgun, but it's shotgunplayers.org.
yeah.
Mm.
But so for me, my daughters were at that point 10 and 6. And so it really felt like a metronome, like I was either working too much or not enough.
Mhm.
And I just had to accept that, I would go back and forth between feeling like I was not doing enough for my art or I was not doing enough to be a parent. and just had to accept that I would always have those conflicting feelings. And I became a
And you
director.
came back in as an actor at that point, right?
I was just an actor at that point, yeah. And I became a director because I realized that if I was a director, A, I could make the rehearsal schedule, so I wouldn't have to have childcare. And B, if I was stuck and I have a babysitter, I could bring my kids to rehearsal. And if I was the director, no one could argue with me about it. So that's why I became a director and realized I actually really loved doing that. And that's actually more of how I identify as a theater artist, really, these days.
Very nice.
Uh,
And
yeah.
Evelyn, what about your path here?
Well,
Any particular
well,
stopping points?
I had growing up did a lot of performing, and then got, as I became an adult, really stopped. I occasionally would do solo performing. And then when I was 50, I had been paying attention to Playground. They were sending prompts out by emails every day. And then they sent around an email saying, well, we're no longer letting anyone submit. We're starting a writer's pool. And I, of course, had always been annoyed because I always had the fantasy that I could write a play to their writing prompt. And so I decided, they said, here's a prompt. And if you want to see if you can get in the pool, write a play for it. So I did. So I became a playwright at 50. And I'm going to be 67 next week. So
almost birthday.
I've been a playwright for 17 years. Can that be true? Jeez, that's a long time. But it's been, for me, it's been just a fantastic thing. It's like coming home. I mean, when I was little and used to go to the library, the only books, there were like no women playwrights there except Lillian Hellman and Claire Booth Luce, who actually showed up in another play of mine, I think because of that, even though she's a reactionary. But yeah, so it's really so thrilling to now be surrounded by so many wonderful women playwrights. And I have to say, when I joined Playground, I was welcomed by two brilliant local playwrights, the great Martha Sukup, who's also a science fiction writer, and the great Brady Lee, who also is a clown, and a performer and a great playwright. So, one of the things that's been fantastic is where playwriting is concerned. I think often women have a lot of solidarity for each other, and it's been.
Speaking of Brady Lee, I think you can find her at bradylee.com.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't have a website for Martha, but people who are interested can look her up at she's Martha Sukup, Soukup.
Exactly, and she is a member of Playground, so that would be one way to contact her. But they're both really interesting writers.
Yeah. Well, thank you for talking with us. I think, and I love how many people you shouted out here, and I love that you've mentioned the solidarity that so many women have within this field. I think the solidarity that so many people in this field have, but particularly shouted out a couple of people who helped raise you up, and that obviously is part of the point of the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival to make the greater field and the general public aware of all of the amazing women and non-binary and trans artists that we have here, all the amazing work that they're doing, and to offer them opportunities to meet with and find new collaborations out of it, but also just to celebrate each other and keep an eye open to something that actually Patrick from Shotgun said to me years ago, that there's no reason for any of us to feel like we're competing against each other, that good theater begets more good theater, and we should always all be supporting each other.
Absolutely.
And so, as we mentioned support, I want our listening audience to know that Bay Area Women's Theater Festival is paying all of its artists. We strongly believe in the importance of paying artists for the work that they do. No work shows up, except for improv, shows up suddenly on stage without a whole bunch of prep. And even improv, they've done a lot of classes first. So the years of work that go into creating a great piece of art that moves you and makes your life a better place needs recompense. So we are paying all of our interviewees, including these two that you've gotten to hear from today. But if you would like to sweeten the pot for them, you can pay. You can send donations to Venmo through Venmo to @Evy Pine. That's EVYPINE, like the tree. And anything donated there will go towards furthering the Invisible Project, this wonderful, beautiful piece of work that is still in process, and which will eventually appear at the Amplify live event when it happens. Thank you so much for joining us today. It was just such a joy to get to talk to you. And we want to wish you the best until we get to see each other in person.
Stay well, wash your hands.
Yep. Absolutely. Thank you so much.
And we
Stay
also,
well, wash your hands.
We also want to direct you to links to Evy and Katja's social media pages, and you can also find the Bay Area Women's Theater Festival on social media. Your support allows us to keep our commitment to this art. We are going to keep doing this, and we want you to be a part of it in helping us amplify women and non-binary artists' voices. Thank you so much for being a part of this with us.
Till next time.